I'm Larry Bishop, and you're listening to the World is Wrong podcast.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about Wilder Napalm.
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films the world is wrong about. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Andros Jones.
And I'm one of your hosts, and my name is Bryan Connolly.
I tried to say that like Dennis Quaid. I tried to say it with this big old smirk. I am Andros Jones. Well, we're here to talk about one of your selections, a film that I know you've been wanting to do here for a while, for a Wilder Napalm from 1993, directed by Glenn Gordon Caron, starring Arliss Howard, Debra Winger, and Dennis Quaid, although that's not the order in which they are listed on the box.
One of my biggest pet peeves, I don't know if you know, I feel this way as an actor, is when they have the movie poster or the box and there's the names and then the people's faces and they don't line up. I hate that. I hate that where like it'll say like Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes, but then Wesley Snipes will be under Sean because it's like they at the last minute decided to change the title order or because of some dispute with their manager or who that drives me mad. I don't know why I used Rising Sun as an example. I don't think that's true, but it just like that is. Has that ever happened to you, or you're on the poster and someone else's name is?
I could every time. I could just go on a list of like, so in the movie Far From Home, I'm on the cover, but my name isn't on the cover.
Oh, it's not even on there.
No.
Oh man.
When the Attic Expeditions came out, face on the cover, name not even. I'm the lead. Name's not even on the cover. Now it's with the Severin re-release, they got my name on it. When Nightmare on Elm Street 4 came out, the press release that they sent out, under my picture, it was Rodney Eastman's name.
No respect.
Oh, yeah. So so you have you've touched a sore spot there, buddy.
Well, so we all feel for Arliss Howard,
who is the star of this movie.
But got
yeah.
Like on IMDb, he's third listed after Debra Winger, after Dennis Quaid. So, like, because alphabetical order, he should be first, and in order of him being the star, he should be first. He would be alphabetical order by first name and last name. It's not fair. But
yeah.
Anyways,
I think we already dug in here. So should we just play a clip of this film and then we'll get into talking about it?
Let's do it.
There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers.
They know what you can do?
Sure do. Why, we're just one big old thermonuclear family, Wilder.
Christ, Wallace. You're a clown. Good job.
Well, you too, Wilder. Photo booth jockey. Very impressive. Kind of like the Marlboro Man or something. A nice rug, Wilder. Good look for you. Real hair never grew back, huh? I'm real sorry about that.
Go drop your pants and chase a donut, you and your single helix friends.
Oh, fellas, what did I say wrong? He's going all ballistic on me. So, how's Vida?
Still with me?
Well, hell, I knew that. Coming into town today, we saw y'all's love burn across the clouds. A real meteorological phenomenon. You and Sweet Vida still living in that trailer park? Homie! Why, I think that's just the perfect place to just pop down, start grinding out rug rats. Just be domestic. Buy some spinning daisy reflectors for the yard. Let those beautiful, dirty-faced little children just run around the neighborhood with no pants on.
A fate worse than death proclaims my brother, the clown.
This guy's been blowing our fuses with his air conditioner, Biff.
This air conditioner?
Don't do it.
Is this the machine to which you refer?
I said,
This beautiful, climate-controlled, frost-free tundra wonder?
Oh boy, I'm excited to talk about this movie. I may be the only person in the planet who's excited about talking about this movie from my experience.
I am.
From my experience of trying to get people excited about this. So, here's the plot of Wilder Napalm. I'll make it simple. There's a man named Wilder. He works in a little kind of photomat. I don't think these really exist anymore, but back in the day, pre-digital, you'd have this little place where you'd drop your film off and they would give you developed photos. And that's his job. He works in the middle of this terrible kind of dehumanizing strip mall, dead center in the parking lot. His wife, Debra Winger, playing Vida, is on house arrest. House arrest because she committed arson, and she has an ankle bracelet, and she just stays home and is counting down the days when she can leave her house finally. So Wilder's at work, and all of a sudden a circus shows up, a traveling carnival. And lo and behold, the lead of this ragtag group is Wallace, a clown, a circus clown, played by Dennis Quaid, who also happens to be Wilder's estranged brother. Of course, his estranged brother Wallace had a relationship with Debra Winger's character in the past. It caused a major rift between brothers. And now, with his appearance back into town, this rift kind of is bubbled back up. There's sort of a love triangle that's going on here. There's definitely a competition between brothers over the love of this woman. She's frustrated because Wilder kind of wants to live a simple life and doesn't really want to go crazy with anything. She's about to get out of house arrest and wants to go out to see the opera and the symphony and just go on to town. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to just call out numbers for bingo. He's also a volunteer. Wilder's also a volunteer fireman, and he travels around this little town putting out fires with his fellow firemen, who are all led by Emmett Walsh, returning to The World Is Wrong, and an a cappella group, the Mighty Echoes, playing the rest of the firefighters, and occasionally throughout the film we get a beautiful song from them. Oh, did I mention the brothers both have pyrokinesis, the ability to start fires with their mind? That is also what this movie is about. It kind of is a play on Firestarter. The movie references it very openly. And it's just a crazy sort of comedy, romance, silly, mean, strange film. One could draw comparisons to the work of Tim Burton or Barry Sonnenfeld, but the script by Vince Gilligan, who later brought us Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, taps into some weird kind of character study in the way that he does so well. This is a great movie. I had never seen this movie before. Within the last 2 years is when I first saw it. And it's an exciting thing to talk about. I'm excited to tell everyone about it, though no one else is excited to hear about it in my experience until now. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, we've already gotten into a little bit of how the world is wrong about this, but do you want to dig in a little bit more on your personal experience of the wrongness of the world around this film?
Yeah, so basically this movie was made and then it was shelved for a few years. The studio didn't know what to do with it. which is why I feel it doesn't feel like a movie from 1993. Clearly, it was made a few years before that, in the early 90s. And when it was released, I think it was just kind of dumped on video and didn't really, like, it had a small theatrical release and made nothing. Nobody really talked about it. It came and went, and it was gone. There is still no good real release of this movie. I believe some archive put the DVD out. I don't know if it was MGM or which archive. Maybe Warner Archive. And it's just kind of thrown on a DVD. I feel this movie deserves a real Blu-ray release. I was so excited when I watched this because I was on a Dennis Quaid high. Because sort of like my into this movie was realizing that Dennis Quaid is actually brilliant and very exciting. Whereas before 2 years ago, I wrote him off as just some handsome guy from Texas who's in movies and he's fine. But Randy Quaid's the wild one. But then I kind of went through a line of Dennis Quaid movies. I started with The Big Easy, and he is great in it, and he is really over the top, and it reminded me a lot of sort of the best of Nicolas Cage. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that Dennis Quaid had that in him. Then I watched Great Balls of Fire, and again, he's just playing the kind of unhinged, crazy performance you want from someone playing crazy, unhinged Jerry Lee Lewis. And I was like, oh my, I had no idea that Dennis Quaid was actually a very interesting, exciting actor. I always liked him. I liked him in the things I've seen, but I wasn't seeing the right stuff. I didn't realize that he's been holding back. It's sort of like when you see the best of Alec Baldwin when he's doing really good comedy, and you're like, oh, I had no idea you were actually, this is like your strength. This is what you're really good at. And that clicked with Dennis Quaid for me. And then I went off and running, fell right into Wilder Napalm, not knowing much about it, just kind of being like, oh, it's written by Vince Gilligan. This is interesting. I don't know how excited I am to see a romantic comedy starring Arliss Howard and Debra Winger and Dennis Quaid, but I'll give it a chance. I watched it. I was totally floored by it. So excited. I was like, why have I never seen this movie? This is the type of movie that I would have loved, like as a teenager, as a man in his 20s and his 30s. And like, why did it take me till I was about 40 to see this movie? I don't know what it is about it. Maybe we'll figure it out through this episode, but something about this movie really clicks with me. I got so excited, I convinced the Alamo Drafthouse to show a rare, pristine 35mm print of it that they found to an audience of people. I excitedly got up in front of everybody, talked about how this movie's great. I'm so excited. And maybe I oversold it, like I'm doing that here, because nobody in the audience really connected with it. Everyone was kind of like left the movie either hating it or just going, huh, okay. And I was just kind of left alone again, shaking my head, being like, I know this movie's great, but I need to find the other people out there. I need to find my Wilder Napalm tribe that can connect to me with this movie. And so that's sort of how the world is wrong. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the first time ever where I am the one who's wrong and everyone else is right. But I swear to you, this movie's good. It's really, really, really good. And it's so good that it's one of those movies that when I'm watching it, I often think, this might be my favorite movie. It often happens when I watch this film, and I've seen it a number of times now. So, there you go.
Well, I have questions for you.
I'm sure you do.
But let me tell you about my experience with this film, if you don't mind.
Sure, please.
So I think I've talked about it on the show, but I have this thing, and it's not really a good thing. As I'm not, it's not something I'm proud of. It's a weird quirk of my psyche. But when there's a movie that I hear about that I get really excited from what I've heard about it, I sort of decide, okay, well, I need to see this, but the time has to be totally just right. So that's why it took me like 10 years to see Under the Skin. In the meantime, I saw hundreds of movies that were crap, but I could watch them without it. Like, I just didn't have this thing about it that I knew it was an important thing. So Wilder Napalm fits into that. Cause when I was in LA when it came out, and I remember it getting really great reviews, at least where I read it, the reviews I read. And at the time, I was pretty excited about Arliss Howard. It was a few years from Full Metal Jacket, but he was. I know Vince D'Onofrio is kind of seen as the breakout star from that, but for me, the breakout star was Arliss Howard. I just thought he was so great in that movie. His death scene was one of the most, like as an actor watching it, as a young actor watching it, it was just a real, I don't know, an inspiration of like what could be achieved by an actor. It's just fantastic. So I guess my point is that even though this is the first time I've seen this movie, because you suggested it, it's been in my mind in a positive place, and I've been looking forward to it. And then I watched it on Tubi, and I have a lot of fondness for Tubi. They put Mad Dog Time on their service after we covered it. Of course, probably because of our coverage. But with this, when I watched it, they break it up with commercials. And this film, when I watched it broken up by commercials, it really messed it up for me. And I knew there was something. I wasn't sure if I liked the film, but I knew that I needed to watch it again without those breaks. And then you told me, hey, this is on Amazon Prime. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, I watched that. So I watched it again last night. And I definitely had a better experience. I still have misgivings about it. There's some things. I think I know why where the film loses me and where it gets me. But I also watched it and I got a really good sense of why you love this film. It's very like there's a lot of things there that are. Knowing you, I can see, oh, well, this is it opens with a scene with Jim Varney not doing Ernest, but being great. And I'm like, well, of course, that's your Mordecai's mustache.
It's Jim Varney, just automatic 4 stars, no matter what the movie is. He shows up.
I think for you, it adds 2 stars to the rating. Whatever the original rating is, it's 2 more stars if he's in it. So I get it. When there are people that you just love, it's like when with me and Scoot McNairy and Frank. It's like, okay, well, this film already has some extra zhuzh to it. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you about this, and so I have some questions for you. So you ready for my questions?
I'm ready for all the questions about this
Okay,
movie.
First of all, I want to know when you did the screening at Alamo Drafthouse and people didn't like it. Were they just like, I hate it? Or did anyone have a conversation with you about like specifically, like what was it that... Because I think there's a lot to love in this. I can see why the film doesn't work for some people.
Well, what's interesting is what often happens and this has happened a lot in my life, and this is a thing that my friends have described to me as being very endearing, but I kind of look at it as sort of sad from my point of view. But like, I will show people excitedly, whether it's a full theater, which this was, or a full living room, a movie that I think is funny. We're watching the movie, and then I am definitely laughing hysterically through the whole thing, and then I'm the only person laughing hysterically from the whole thing. This happened when I saw The Love Guru in the theater. This happened when I tried to show all my friends Dana Carvey's Master of Disguise. This happened when I tried to show my good friend's Grandma's Boy. Like, this keeps happening in my life where I'm like, oh my God, it's so good. And then all my friends are like, we didn't think that movie was funny, but we were sure amused watching you love this movie so much, Bryan. And that's sort of what happened with Walden and Napalm, where I'm like the whole time, like, loving it. Because I'm a very vocal lover of movies in theaters. Like, I like to, like, I laugh loud, like, I get really excited. And I think that I was a man alone. My wife loves this movie too. So I'm not totally alone on this. But, like, I think the other people, they didn't think it was funny. They thought it was strange. I showed it to my writing partner and good friend, Zach. He hated it. Like, he just hated it. Thought it was stupid, did not understand it. A lot of people just kind of left kind of confused by like, what? I don't really understand what that was. And there was some polite like, yeah, okay, yeah. And but they all agreed that they were happy that I love it so much.
Well, wait. But that's all fine and good. But what I'm curious about is no one was like, oh, well, I don't like a cappella groups.
No, it really was
I hate Dennis Quaid or...
No, it felt like a gut reaction for them. It was just like an automatic recoil of like, no, I do not like that movie. Or just sort of like a pat on the back of like, good for you, Bryan. You like that movie. Okay. And it's like, I think they didn't want to hurt my feelings, maybe. But I was not able to get from people the actual words as to what was about it that they did not like about this movie. I mean, what I like about this movie is that to me, it's not like any other movie. Like it has elements certainly of other movies, but like just the tone that this movie goes for. And I really feel it's kind of that Vince Gilligan tone in a way, which works for other people for like Breaking Bad, but just like it does come across as mean, I guess, sometimes, but there's a humor to it. And like, this was also in his X-Files episodes that he wrote, like the way he writes people being mean to each other and the way he has people kind of have mental breakdowns or the way their brains break, all within sort of a plot that is more fantastic than like it's clearly not a reality. Like I don't think Breaking Bad takes place in any sort of reality. It definitely feels like a heightened reality. And I feel like he really excels at that as a writer. And I feel this movie, I mean, this is the first thing of his that was ever made, kind of lives in that world. And just like with Breaking Bad, seeing really good actors kind of in this crazy world is really exciting to me. So seeing like someone as brilliant as Debra Winger and Arliss Howard and Dennis Quaid in this crazy concoction, this whatever genre mashup this movie is really fun to me. And to other people, they just find it really stupid, or they don't understand why is this happening. Why does the plot have them have pyrokinesis? Why is that? Why couldn't this be a romantic movie about these brothers? It could.
Well, that's I'm sorry, that's a dumb question. I mean, it's a film. It's called Wilder Napalm. It's about fire. Of course, like that's like that. Then you want another movie.
And there's so many scenes in this movie, we get into it, where I watch these scenes and I get really, really excited. Really excited about filmmaking. Really excited about what you can do with a movie, like with symbolism. Like this movie hits you over the head with it, but in a way that I just think is great. And again, like when I show it to people, I'm the one jumping up and down, like, oh, that scene is, there's so much there. And everyone else kind of looks at me like, I'm not connecting with what you're seeing.
Okay, well, I want to get into some of these scenes. Okay. So let me just tell you. So my take on it, my big take on it, and this is tough for me because I really don't like saying this, but having watched it a second time, I really think Debra Winger is very bad in this movie. I have a great fondness for Debra Winger, but watching it this time, I just was like, oh my God. Debra Winger is acting class bad in this. Some of her monologues, they don't seem like a person. They seem like an actor saying lines. And it happens several times, like 2 or 3 times when it goes to just her. Like there's something about the way she plays her character. Like I just feel like the film loses me at the point when it's supposed to grab me in the sort of her magical place. And I'm not saying she's not, like when she's actually interacting with other actors, then she's good. Even though some of the choices she makes as a character make her pretty unbelievable. But I think all of that would have worked. I think I'll drop one of these scenes in here just for people to like hear what I'm talking about, and then you can make your own decision.
Wilder, I'm sorry I broke your trust. I guess what I did was sort of reactionary. I mean, yesterday was my first night of freedom, and you had to spend it calling bingo. Oh, don't get me wrong, bingo's great. Normally I'd say bingo's where it's at. I guess I just got a little crazy. I got selfish. I figured I'd steal you away from squinting at a bunch of ping pong balls all night. I figured I'd get you out on the town for once, for one night of real life. One night of freedom from that country western version of a Soviet gulag. Well? Wilder, are you gonna say something?
If you think that was, if that was good or bad, but I really do, and I think Debra Winger is a great actress, so a great actor, and so I don't like saying that. I don't like saying this. It feels shitty, especially because her character is one that we're supposed to feel great fondness for, and I do have sympathy for her plight. She should be the most sympathetic character in this film. And unfortunately, because of Debra Winger, I don't think it is.
I wonder if it's because maybe this is not the genre she should be working in, like a quirky comedy, as opposed to Terms of Endearment, An Officer and a Gentleman. Like maybe this is not the type of world that she can thrive in as a performer.
Who knows? Maybe it's working with her husband.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, good to mention. So this is her and Arliss Howard are married in real life. They have children. They're an actual married couple, which is interesting. And I don't know if they met while they started making this movie or if they were already together. But
I think they were already together.
But they're still together, so good for them.
Yeah. No, they're. I like Debra Winger as a person, and like as an actor. I root for her. That's why it was so hard. Like I had to force myself to come to this conclusion. Really watching this film. Like if I wasn't watching this to talk about it, I probably would have decided that I just didn't like the film. Because I'd rather not like the film than not like Debra Winger's performance. But the truth is, I don't like Debra Winger's performance in this. So, that said, there's a lot in this film that I did really enjoy. And I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about the highlights. I have some things in here that I like to talk about. But, well, one thing, at the end of my notes, I don't know if you noticed this, but I was looking at the credits. Ricky Jay.
Yeah, Pyro Magic.
Pyro Magic by Ricky Jay and Michael Weber.
And the effects in this movie are great. Like considering this is like
No, they aren't.
They are. So like when
I enjoy them, but they're not great.
Like all the fire stuff, all the explosions. There's an amazing scene, maybe the best scene, one of the best scenes in the movie, when there's like a fiery moment between Dennis Quaid and Debra Winger at a mini golf course, and their passion, because he has pyrokinesis, their passion becomes visual in terms of like a kid's ice cream melts and like the things just start exploding and bursting in flames, and all of that looks amazing. And I don't know like which of that is the pyro magic Ricky Jay did, or was it like the fingers that light up, or just like the little balls of fire and stuff. Like I think all of that looks fantastic. Like if this was all CG fire, it would have not worked as well for me. But the fact that there's actual fire and actual things exploding, that makes it all the more thrilling.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, yes and no. That scene, the scene in the where they light the fire with their kissing was really, I thought that was great. Even on the first watch, I thought that was great. But there are some of the effects that I think are pretty cheesy. There's a bit where Debra Winger, who always dresses in green and paints her cigarettes green, not really explained, where she wants Quaid and Arliss Howard's characters to light her cigarettes with their pyrokinesis. And the cigarette clearly has a little sparkler thing on its tip that goes on. Like, it's so clearly a doctored cigarette that has been set up to go, psst, and I'm just, Hey, it was the 80s. It's not they're working with what they have. But I since you made a point of saying that they're great, I have to say, if you're watching this and you don't think that they're as great as Bryan does, I agree with you.
I've seen this movie so many times and I've never noticed what you just talked about.
Yeah, when he goes to light her cigarette, it doesn't light like a cigarette. It lights like a sparkler.
Well, maybe that's just how his special thing works.
Then why doesn't that work why doesn't everything else turn into a spark? No, that's the way it works, but that's also the way it works if you put a sparkler tip that is a pyrotechnics to go off at the end of a cigarette.
Well, none of this is real. It's a movie.
I'm just saying that if it was great work, then it would look like the cigarette just lit. But it doesn't look like the cigarette lit. It looks like someone put the sparkler stuff on the edge of a cigarette and lit it.
Well, take it up with Ricky Jay. He did the pyro magic. In my mind, those are the trick cigarettes that magicians use all the time, where they do that trick. Yeah, and maybe because when usually a magician does it, you're not right next to them with a camera on stage. You're like a little bit away in the audience, so it looks more exciting. So maybe they should have altered it to be a little more for the cinema. Just put a little green screen nub on the end of that sparkler tip and digitally erase it, and it'd be fine.
Okay, so having gotten that out of the way, I feel like the opening of this film is like, when this film starts, if the film stayed where it starts, I feel like people would love it, because the opening scene and into the credits is just, I'm grabbed. I am so grabbed. So you want to talk about this opening scene? You must love it.
I love it, and this is what it got me like immediately. Because when watching this movie, and everyone, please watch the movie before you listen to this, like with any of our episodes, because we're just going to spoil everything. I didn't know that Dennis Quaid was a clown for so much of this movie. I didn't know he was a clown at all, because on the cover of the box of the video, it's just a handsome looking Dennis Quaid holding Debra Winger. So the very first scene is like, you're at this carnival and you're kind of just see the back of a clown as he's shooting his finger like a gun into the air, zapping flies like a bug zapper. So instantly you're like, okay, that's a weird trick. And then Jim Varney as a Carny, classic, brilliant casting. Just talking to this guy. They're kind of talking about this guy's career, and sort of like he made this special suit. And while they're having this conversation, and it's at night, and it kind of feels sinister, and you don't know why. There's just kind of like a weird, like the tone is just sort of like, it feels kind of like a beginning of a horror movie, or like not a comedy.
Doesn't it? It really made me feel like Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Yeah,
it has that sort of like, it's sort of sweet but scary.
Yeah,
but it's a carnival. But it's just, ooh, it's such a good tone. It really.
And then a little bratty kid shows up, and basically is just being a little shit. And then it reveals that the clown is Dennis Quaid, and then he sticks his finger out like a gun to the kid and pulls the trigger of his hand, and you expect like, oh no, is he gonna kill this kid? And then everyone around is sort of like, Jim Varney is like, they're all kind of, and the snake lady are kind of like, is he gonna kill this kid? And then he doesn't, but he does let out a like crazy evil laugh as a clown. So if anyone has any clown phobias out here, this probably isn't the movie for you. But it's Dennis Quaid just having his evil laugh as a clown, and then it goes to this big credits sequence. This big sounding music, just like, and it's intense sounding. None of it is really showing its hand. Nothing is showing his hand as this being a comedy at all. It's just sort of like, oh
no, the music, the opening credits, the music, that scene, and then that, you just think you are in for a very, very serious movie. That Wilder Napalm, the opening,
and you see sort of like sunspots or whatever, like just over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so intense, and it's great. It's just, it kind of sets you up for a letdown in the first 10 minutes after this.
Oh, and I want to point out the music is by Michael Kamen, who I believe did Brazil. I think he did the soundtrack to Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, very good soundtrack from him, especially the opening credits song.
Okay, so we get to the parking lot and the photo booth, and all of this intensity. Now it gets, and it could still be a very intense, scary movie because it's just a guy alone in his, this is the setup of the movie. It's been intense, and now there's this guy alone in his booth, and at that point, do we see that he's reading about Firehouse Weekly or Firehouse Journal, and basically that's when we are introduced to Debra Winger. He goes home. It's Arliss Howard, and he goes home and he meets Debra Winger, who really wants to get it on. Talk about this.
She's under house arrest, so she's at home all day, and she a lot of what she likes to do is start little fires just so her husband can come home early, like basically to come home and just be there. She'll just start a little brush fire or something, just like a little, like, I don't know what happened. And then all the firemen come because he's also a volunteer fireman. And then he's home and she's like, oh, thanks, you're home now. And everyone's like, okay, this happened. It seems like it happens on a weekly basis, according to these people. But she just, like, she has a fire for her husband. Like, she just wants to have sex constantly. Maybe it's because you're just home all the time and you're bored and this is what you want. But this is what she wants. And and he just kind of reluctantly, someone's like, oh, okay, I guess here we go again. And, it's interesting.
Well, actually, let's back up. Let's back up. He's not just let's go again. He's sort of like, he's immediately like, she's like, let's go do it on the roof. And he's like, no, we're not going to do it.
How about
on the
just
roof.
a bed? Can we do it like a normal person?
Yeah. So he's like the conservative one who doesn't want to, and she's the wild one. And this is when it's revealed in a scene that might be off-putting to some people, but is also very, I think, is sweet. She's like, can I do it? And he's like, yes, do you have to? And we don't know what it is. But then she takes off his wig and he has burns all over his head, and she kisses the burns on his head. And it's sweet and it's kinky, and like this opening is very, like, she's a highly sexual person. This is a very sensual scene, and it will come back later. But they do eventually. She does convince him to have sex with her. So good on them. But there is a moment here that I do have to. So I was watching in the second watching. I was like, what is taking me out of this? Well, the fact that they go and have sex on top of a canopy on a bed, and then all we see is them falling through the canopy at the end. Now, I don't know if you understand, like, I don't think this film understands the physics of a canopy. Two people can't be having sex on a canopy. Two people couldn't be on top of a canopy without it collapsing. It's a weird choice. It bothers me. Did that bother you? Obviously
no,
not.
I didn't.
Has anyone mentioned that to you?
Never even thought about it.
Really?
No.
It's a weird choice, though. As I pointed out to you, it is a weird choice. Like, how would that even work?
Maybe they're really calm about it, and then they aren't. Maybe if you lay really still and slow on a canopy, it'll hold you for a little bit, and then it'll break.
No, you can't. You cannot sit on a canopy without it. Like, one person gets on if you can show me the canopy that can hold even one person just sitting still, I will eat a whole box of Clowny cereal. Okay, so it's been great sex. We can see on their face, Arliss Howard's character feels great about it. She feels great about it. They're in love. It's wonderful. But then in the morning, Debra Winger has one of her bad monologues, talking to Arliss Howard about her dream, her Elvis dream, and she does a very bad Elvis impression. when she's talking. Like, I really, this is like a weakness, I feel like, of the director. Like, it's not, because Debra Winger is a great actor. She was allowed to be bad in this in a way that, like, don't make her do the Elvis impression. If she can't do an Elvis impression, just have change this dialogue so that she doesn't have to do that. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on there, but basically the point is we find out that she's, as you said, she's frustrated because Arliss Howard, in the dream of Elvis, she's with Elvis, but Elvis won't ever go on stage. And Arliss Howard's character is Elvis. And he's like, oh, ma'am, I'll just rather keep parking these cars. And so we kind of get a sense that she, like, even though they've just satisfied each other, she is not satisfied with Arliss Howard in some way. Like, she loves him, but she's frustrated that he's not more of something, maybe more like Dennis Quaid's character. Do you want, like, I kind of want to get to the next thing, which is, I think, where it's more fun when the carnival comes to town. But do you have anything to say about the Debra Winger Arliss Howard relationship in this film?
I agree that I feel it is definitely the weakest thing of this movie is the stuff around her character. I don't know if that's a Vince Gilligan thing, because definitely in Breaking Bad, the weakest characters are the women in that show. They're not as, like, I feel like when he's writing, he finds it more fun to write men than women. So the women don't get quite the good writing in a strange way. But also that, I think the stuff with her character, with Vida, that's also when it's a little, and I can see why maybe this turned people off when watching this movie. That's when it definitely lays on the quirk, where it's like, she's wearing green and she does this. And it definitely, in a way, feels slightly like a different movie than the rest of the movie. Like, it definitely feels more like a quirky thing. There's something kind of overtly quirky about her stuff. I think they thought it was going to come off as cute or something, and it doesn't really work. Because like you said, the green doesn't really make sense. I don't really understand it. It doesn't really click as to, like, why is everything green? I don't really get that symbolism or the character thing. Why is she so horny all the time? I guess it's because she's home. And there's definitely, like, a big hole in her backstory in a way. Like, they eventually tell you why she was under house arrest, but I think if they kind of leaned more into her being, like, obsessed with setting fires, and of course she falls in love with someone who can set fires with his mind, like, that would definitely make the character more interesting. So I agree that she is, like, there's something about that character that's, like, the weakest link of this movie, but it doesn't bother me so much that it takes me out of loving this movie. But I definitely can see that's, yeah. I think that I'd imagine that's a turnoff for a lot of people, is her stuff.
Because, well, so after this, then we go back to the parking lot, and this is when the carnival arrives.
Yeah.
And this is great.
And it's all shot with these kind of crazy angles. And there's, like, a part where the carnival's using this one plug to plug in all their shit. And it keeps sort of shorting out Arliss Howard's AC unit, his little AC unit, and his little photo mat. And he has, like, the camera, like, goes, like, over him, like, crazy crane shot as he walks across the parking lot to, you know, unplug and replug. And it's weird. I don't know if you thought this, but, like, the way the humor is here, the way it's shot, the way it's lit, all the stuff kind of in the parking lot and the photo mat reminded me a lot of the beginning of Joe versus the Volcano. You know what I'm talking about? Like, there's something about that kind of the way, I don't know if it's all, like, this kind of post Tim Burton, the way people kind of do strange, like, comedy movie, but it has this sort of, like, strong filmmaking with this kind of using cinema and big angles. And then there's these weird little moments, and it definitely feels like not reality. And the way the music is and stuff, it also kind of reminds me of some of that earlier, better Robert Zemeckis stuff, like pre-Forrest Gump Zemeckis, where he can do, like, a Death Becomes Her. There's just, like, in the tone. There's something in that tone. And this whole movie kind of dips in and out of that tone. But, like, these parts just feels like there's something, it's just, it's like almost like a fairy tale sort of thing, but for grown-ups, and like having this carnival just literally show up out of nowhere, like boop, they just pull in, and it's funny of like, so no one told Arliss Howard's character that there was going to be a carnival. You think like the landlord would have told him like, by the way, I know you're alone most of the time, but an entire carnival is just going to drop on you because they can't just show up anywhere and set up shop. They had to have gotten permission.
It sure seems like that's what they're doing.
And so,
it actually seems like that's what they're doing.
And then this is great. This is when you really get some Dennis Quaid. So Dennis Quaid comes out dressed as a clown, being a total asshole. There's a part where Arliss Howard just says, like, you're a shit, Wallace. And then Dennis Quaid just kind of goes, yes, I am. And it's just like, this is some good smirking. Like, this is Dennis Quaid having a great time. Great time. And it's funny because Gordon Caron did Clean and Sober with Michael Keaton a few years before this movie. And it's just funny because thinking about Michael Keaton, like in my mind, in another world, Dennis Quaid could have totally been Beetlejuice based on his performance in this movie. Can't you see that? Like the way,
yeah.
And maybe this is where also lose people, but it gains my love. Is I love an actor that really wants to ham it up and go big, especially when they're usually not allowed to in movies. And oftentimes people will just hate that. But when Dennis Quaid does it, there's something just so exciting to me, being like, I think this is what he wants to be doing in movies, but he looks like the all-American guy that he's just cast as like the all-American guy and isn't allowed to play these kind of crazy characters. And his whole swagger in this beginning is great because he's acting like a tough guy, acting like, I don't give a shit guy, but he's dressed as a clown with these big floppy shoes and he's doing a lot of posturing as if he's a hot shit, but dressed as a clown the whole time. And that just, to me, makes it even funnier. And the fact that he's backed up by just like this gang of carnies led by Jim Varney. It's just, there's something like so good where I'm watching this being like, this could be a TV show. Why isn't this a Vince Gilligan show about some crazy group of carnies with this like shitty clown? Like that.
Oh yeah, like the way that the way they introduce the carnies when they show up and they just show one carny and he spits his gum into the other carny's mouth. Then they smile and wave at them. It's like, whoo, boy, that is that one little bit says a lot. It's just like establishing world.
And this is when I'm really excited about Arliss Howard in these parts too, because you can just feel his seething hate for his dumb brother. That he hates his brother, and just seeing them kind of like hate each other is so good. And just
yeah, let me get in on a little bit of the Dennis Quaid love here though for this, because I have to say I find maybe this is another one of the things that throws people off in this film. I find Dennis Quaid so much more sympathetic in the clown makeup than as the love interest in this movie. The times when I like him the least is when he's supposed to be the handsome guy wooing Debra Winger. The times when I like him the best is when he's a clown. And the times in the mid, the best part of this movie is when there's this other guy in the middle of that he shows just a couple of times, and we'll get to it. And that's where I feel like, oh, Quaid is fucking great. I'm with you. I'm not always totally like I'm not always as sympathetic to. It's funny the films you talked about, The Big Easy, Great Balls of Fire, and this. I remember I was in Hollywood at the time when Dennis Quaid was on his run of I'm a major movie star. And that was kind of my least favorite part of Quaid's career. I thought he was great in films before, like in Breaking Away and other things. But I guess him as a clown. I wish, honestly, maybe the film would have done better if on the poster it had Dennis Quaid as a clown and Arliss Howard holding his wife, Debra Winger.
And it would have been great if he was just the clown the whole movie, when I first saw this movie, I was like, I hope he's the clown the whole movie. And like, why not? Why not? Sadly, that's not the case, but.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes,
so,
okay.
Do you like any, like last 20 years of Quaid? Like, I watched Cold Creek Manor is great. The Mike Figgis movie with him and Sharon Stone. Have you seen that movie? Like, he is so good in that movie. That's sort of like a weird thriller sort of horror movie where it's Dennis Quaid and Sharon Stone going out to the country to live after a horrible tragedy and just being fucked with by the locals. And if you don't like snakes, don't watch this movie. It's really weird. It's really good. He's really great in it, and he's like definitely gets into some bigger, interesting stuff. Horseman is really weird. That's a good movie. Did you ever see Horseman? That's a strange one.
No, I'm looking. I'm trying to. I'm all the way back to 2008 on his IMDb, and I haven't seen one film. Oh, I saw him in The Day After Tomorrow in 2004.
The most recent one that he's amazing in is The Intruder, which is from 2019. And that's like a crazy thriller where he is menacing this young black couple. And it's amazing. And his performance is great. And it just feels like that good kind of early 90s Hand That Rocks the Cradle sort of Fatal Attraction thriller. But with an old Dennis Quaid just ruining these poor people's lives. And that's also worth checking out. He's just, I don't know. There's something about him that, like, in recent years, I'm kind of like I'm always rooting for Dennis Quaid. I feel like Nicolas Cage, I love him. He gets enough love, but nobody is giving Dennis Quaid the love because I think they're not watching the right things. And yeah, Breaking Away is great too. Like, he is just, or Gorp, he's really good. You ever seen Gorp?
I've seen Garp. I've never seen Gorp.
Gorp, he's really going for it in Gorp as well. Just when he can go into a little crazier territory or be funny, there's something about it that is really exciting to me. And this movie, to me, is like the pinnacle of it.
Oh, no. I know the last thing I saw that was great. He's in the most recent season of Goliath, which is a series, the Billy Bob Thornton series.
I've never seen that.
I love that series. Yeah, that's like Damages. It's one of those series where every season the actors are great. Like there's one season of Goliath that has William Hurt.
Ooh.
And one of the best things I've seen him do. And if you're into Dennis Quaid, he's great in this.
I will have to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, I gotta say I am not as up on the late era Dennis Quaid as you are. So maybe we can inspire a resurgence.
I think it's time. I think now is time because like Randy Quaid gets all the credit for being the wild one, and in real life, I feel he is. In reality, Randy Quaid is the more wild one. But I don't know. Like Dennis Quaid, he came into Vulcan once and rented movies. Very nice man, and I don't know. I just feel like people, I think in their heads, think, oh, he's kind of boring, or he's a straight guy, or he's just like, I don't know. Like they kind of remember him as being so like, oh, you're just like this all American, you're just a guy in a movie. But it's like, no. Like really dig into some Dennis Quaid, and you'll see that he's actually Far From Heaven. He's great in that too.
Yeah.
Like he is one of my favorite actors, and will always be, and I'm always going to be excited about what he has to offer. Anyways, back to this movie.
And we'll be talking about him later in an upcoming episode when we talk about September 30th, 1955.
Is he in that movie?
Yes, he is.
Well, gosh. I guess
maybe you're more excited to watch this film than you were before.
I am now. I had no idea. I didn't know that. Well, yeah, there you go.
And The Long Riders. The early stuff. Yeah. Caveman. I fucking love Caveman.
And he's great at Caveman.
Caveman is a movie maybe we should do.
I love that movie. And you're right, we should do Caveman. Caveman's really good. Okay. So this scene with the two brothers basically kickstarts the next part of the movie, which is sort of now Wilder's life has been thrown off because his brother's in town with the carnival. His brother has big dreams of going public with the pyrokinesis. He wants to be on David Letterman, and Jim Varney is making him this special suit so he can like set things on fire safely. And Wilder, doesn't.
The suit, by the way, is hilarious.
It's like it kind of looks like tinfoil, and it's kind of like a big spaceman, like homemade spaceman-y sort of.
No, the tinfoil. That's the for the assistants.
Oh no,
The
his suit. Yeah,
for-
it's like a weird spandex type.
Like
Like, it looks like a wetsuit in a way.
But it really accentuates his junk and his butt, which gets played up later on. It is such a like weird, like gross, sexy man suit.
Perfect for this character.
Yeah, it really is. It's another clown suit.
So he wants to, it is. So he wants to, so Wallace wants to go public with it, wants to be world famous. But, you know, and Wilder is like, no. Like, and Wilder will, like, you know, he took a lot for his wife just to get him to light a cigarette. Like, he does not want anyone to know that he has this power. He does not do anything with it. The reason why he's burned up is when they had this big blowout a few years back. They were Dennis Quaid's character was throwing fire at him, and Wilder refused to partake in it and just took the blows and just moved on with his life. So the idea of his brother going big with it is sort of like, he can't fathom why he would do that. He's like, you will be studied by the government. Like, no one is gonna, like, you're not going to be champion. People are going to like fear you.
Haven't you seen Firestarter?
Haven't you seen Firestarter? So then the movie gets into this thing where Dennis Quaid characters showing up in Wilder's life constantly, and Wilder does not want him around. And
wait. Can we back up for a second? Because there was something. So what is it with 1980s and women and cellos? Because that's another thing that they give Debra Winger. It's
randomly, because it's not in any other part of the movie.
Susan Sarandon plays a cello in Witches of Eastwick to show that she is repressed. There was the woman from Fame.
Yeah.
Which Glenn Gordon Caron, the director of this, also worked on Fame.
Maybe he has a fetish for women. Maybe there's something about the stance that they have to have their body and legs.
Well, yeah, no, I mean it's clearly it's obvious, and that's it. Like the scene where she's playing the cello, she gives cinematically the film tells us she gave herself an orgasm. Like, she doesn't completely go into Meg Ryan in the diner mode, but she definitely is like, she finishes and then she sort of like, oh my, like she gives herself there's this look of like, wow, I didn't know I could. And that's when smirking, not clowned Dennis Quaid's face shows up behind her. And there is something that is, I think maybe it's part of what it's interesting about him. He's hateable. He's a hateable leading man. It's like Nicholson kind of, but Nicholson has something out. Like, Dennis Quaid's too handsome. I don't know. It's something about him. Like, when he shows up in the door there, I'm not excited. I'm like, ugh. And this is something I should say. This is my own thing that I bring to it. This is a film. It's all about jealousy. I really don't like films about jealousy. That really bugs me. So that's another hurdle. I think the pyrokinesis and the clowning and all that stuff really helps. And the incredible cinema. Like, you're right. Cinematically, this is a very, very cinematic film.
Yeah.
All practical effects. And even though I quibble with how some of them look, it's just constant. It's constantly doing interesting stuff.
It's a very
visually.
stylish movie. Which is funny because I don't think any other movie by Caron is like that. Like, you've seen Love Affair, you've seen Clean and Sober. Those look more kind of straightforward dramas. Like, it seems like this movie's the odd man out, you know? Like,
I haven't seen Clean and Sober, but I have seen Picture Perfect, the Jennifer Aniston film that he did.
You never saw Love Affair with your Love Affair?
Oh, no, I
Warren
did
Beatty?
see Love Affair. Oh, yeah, no, I've seen Love Affair several times. It's, we can talk, well, we should talk about that. Let's talk about that towards the end in our wrap-up.
Sure.
Because we don't want to go down the Warren Beatty trail.
So basically, like, like a sort of, you know, rekindling of the relationship starts between Vita and Wallace.
So let's just back up. So set the scene. So Dennis Quaid shows up, and then they're up on the top of the. They live in a she lives in a trailer. They live in a trailer park, and they're up on the top of the trailer, and they're just talking. And Arliss Howard comes home with all of his firemen and all their firemen's gear, and you can tell he's like, what the fuck? This is not good. And Debra Winger, being in her sort of charming, whatever green fairy character she is, she says, "Hey boys, you gonna catch me?" And then she throws herself backwards off the trailer into their arms, and it's like a Disney movie. It's like I know where you're getting to, but there's several pieces before that. I like hit Arliss Howard's eventual turn. There's this whole setup with him. Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take charge of how you're handling this movie, but I guess I kind of am, if you don't mind, because this part is some of the most exciting part. So they end up in the trailer. First of all, they get a lot of people into this trailer. I feel like a whole
fireman crew. Yeah.
I feel like that shot is in a kitchen somewhere that's not in that trailer, but that's fine. So, and then they're singing Duke of Earl, and they do this sort of silent dance thing with Debra Winger dancing and Dennis Quaid and Arliss Howard just making looks at each other.
It's so good.
And this is one of those things where if we talked in Frank about how it's sort of the perfect tone of it allows it to get away with some stuff that would be iffy and other things.
Yeah.
I feel like this is for me, the opposite of that. Like, this is something that is great on its own. And as we're talking about it, I'm realizing how much I love it. But in context, because of my own hurdles to it, and because of the other stuff, I could see how someone might miss out on what's so great about this. So what I would say is, while you're watching this film, if you're turned on, like, I hope that this can be like, it's a term we're using in the age of COVID, a prophylaxis. Like, if you didn't like this film, you could use this as a prophylaxis going into this again and be like, oh, I know why you might not like this film, but this scene is one of those scenes that just on its own, all of these actors doing this, it's pretty great. Right up to her realization of what's going on.
Yeah.
Which is what really makes it work.
It's so, the performances from all three, I think, are really good in the scene. And it's just like, with this weird, like, oh, all these firemen are singing? Okay. And it's a great little moment.
And one of the things that's also been established here is that Wilder is a terrible fireman. Dangerous. Whenever he's fighting fires, he's flashing back on the time that he and Wallace burned down Horace Braintree's shack, which was a traumatic event.
And those flashbacks are traumatic. Like, there's not comedy in, like, that feels like also another movie where it's like this, it's sad and scary and upsetting, like them being kids and getting into something bad. They're really interesting tonally from the rest of the movie.
And this is also we haven't talked about. This is Emmett Walsh he plays the fire chief.
Yeah,
and also the police chief. Is he? I couldn't quite tell. The police and the fire department are sort of they work together in this small town.
Yeah.
But he's not there at the Duke of Earl singing. He's not one of the singers. That would be awesome if Emmett Walsh was one of the doo-wop singers. That would be fantastic. So I want to make. There's one thing I noticed. Dennis Quaid lies about Horace Braintree and his shack, because in their argument, he says Horace Braintree doesn't even care anymore. But we see in the flashbacks that Horace Braintree was burned to a crisp. So either and just if you take this seriously from the standpoint of like this was intentional, either Wilder, his memory is incorrect, which is a traumatized memory could be. Maybe he's remembering it was burned to a crisp, and Dennis Quaid's character, the Wallace, is actually telling the truth that Horace Braintree is fine, and he's divorced from a swimsuit model and owns a couple of Buick dealerships and takes his kids to ice cream or something. I don't know how he says it in the film, but what do you think? Do you think that Wallace is lying to Wilder, or that Wilder is remembering it incorrectly?
See, how I see it when watching this movie is that Wallace is lying to himself, and I think he thinks it's true because he wants to think that he's this cool guy that can start fires, whereas Wilder knows the danger of that, which is why he stopped doing it and doesn't do it. You know, like, that's kind of how I look at it. Is like each have their memory of it because one wants to like still do it and the other one is like no. So but it could also be that they both remembered it wrong and they just remember it in the way that works for both of them and their way they're living their lives, and who knows what actually happened to Horace Braintree.
Yeah, well, that could have been explored in the sequel. Even Wilder Napalm. And then this is the heartbreaking part. I don't know. This is the part where it really is heartbreaking. So she gets released and Wilder is just kind of shut down. Like, he was already a little bit of a stick in the mud, but he's totally shut down, and she wants to have sex with him in his booth and he won't for a dumb reason. And then she wants her to take some time off and he can't because for dumb reasons. And then the night that she's off, he's planned to call bingo, and it's just like you just feel how like the film is trying to do everything it can to make it to put us totally on her side, that she's about to run off with Wallace for a whirlwind evening of music and fire and kisses, and I don't know. It's sad, and I don't know. This was a frustrating part of the movie for me, but I definitely felt like in these parts, I did feel Debra Winger being the Debra Winger that I love as an actress. Did you have that? I mean, you're married. I was married, and maybe it's more complicated for me because I was married, and I recognize. I'm like, when I watch those, I'm like, they're not going to stay together.
Her and Wilder.
I don't like in real life. People who who treat each other like this. Well, and even in movies, a lot. The movies that are made from the standpoint of the woman about these dynamics, she does not stay with that guy. Yeah. So, anyway. Did you feel? I mean, did those scenes give you the feels?
I find those scenes kind of sad, just because I really like Wilder so much, and and she's so quick to just jump into the arms of Dennis Quaid's character, and I don't really like Dennis Quaid's character. Like, I feel he's a bad guy. You know, there's something very devilish about him, not just because he can shoot fire, but like his smirk and everything. It's just sort of like he's showing up at the town with this big show and with this big bully gang. And it's just sort of him just kind of being like pushing little Arliss Howard out of his life so he can take what he wants. So like in those scenes, I'm not feeling like, oh, I'm glad they're together. Oh, what fire. I'm more like, oh, fuck this guy. What's he doing?
Well, yeah.
Why is he messing with this guy's wife? And then I'm sad being like, why is she okay with this? Like, I guess because he brings this charm in this show. And that she just kind of, and like she's been home for a year, and then her husband has decided just to kind of be this dud and not bring the excitement for when she gets out of house arrest.
Well, weren't the Dennis Quaid? I mean, we're supposed to believe that Wilder stole Vida from Wallace originally, or stole whatever.
Yeah.
That she was originally with Wallace.
Yeah.
And then then the wedding picture, Wallace has the bandages. Yeah. So we got it. In my imagination, it's one of those things where she was with Wallace and she loved them both, and then Wallace is an asshole. Yeah. And Wilder's a sensitive guy, and when Wallace burned Wilder, she took care of him. Yeah. They fell in love, and then they got married, and Wallace probably did some fucked up shit and stormed out of town, and now. That's one of the things I got to say, going back to Quaid's performance, like each time he's like, there's several times, and one of them is when he's driving away from the first time he hangs out at the house with them, and then they have this fight outside, and they talk about Horace Braintree's shack, and he starts driving off.
You're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me. They're gonna put me in the movies. And all I gotta do is
and then the way that goes from being like sort of like fuck you to someone's face, like ha ha ha, cocky, to angry in the car, to like literally breaking down, like you see the sadness. That's some fucking great. Like that's like that should be a greatest hits reel. Quaid, I feel like that's a great fucking moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, yes.
So anyway, I'm trying to set up. So then they go on this whirlwind sex and fire show. Although they don't actually have sex, but they have this cinematic affair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the scene that you were talking about. Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to say about their affair?
It's just I don't know, I think it's a great scene. Is great. Like the scene in the mini golf place is so simple in a way of like the idea of it, and they talk about Bewitched. So second Bewitched for World is Wrong, and I don't know. I just love that scene. Like I don't like that they're getting together. I feel sorry for a little Wilder, but like there's something about that scene that does totally work for me, and the fact then the fire they cause, Arliss Howard has to put out the fire caused by his wife and his brother. Like I just like that whole thing is great, and then it ends with that beautiful moment of them driving back, and like, is that when the guy sings the song in the back of the truck? Like I don't want to set the world on fire. And it's it's so beautiful, and it's just Arliss Howard, just like, and it's that part is so sad because it's like it's Arliss Howard. I feel realizing like what's going on in a way, and just sort of like with this beautiful solo from one of the singing firemen, just singing it, a great song, like one of my favorite songs. Who did the original version of that song? Do you know? It's one of those 50s sort of. Sounds like doo-woppy sort of groups, but I don't remember. It was like the Ink Spots or who did.
Oh, you're right. It is the Ink Spots.
So yeah, that song originally done by the Ink Spots, but done beautifully here. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the Firemen is an actual a cappella group called the Mighty Echoes. They're still a band. This is their only movie appearance. They are great. But so this is really, so you have this crazy scene of the golf course.
Wait. Do you think they advertised themselves as seen in the film Wilder Napalm?
No, that would serve them no benefit.
I bet that, of course they do.
Nobody saw this movie. That would only work for me. I would be like, oh, that's the guys. I bet they're just, sad.
I'm sure it's in their press kit.
It's on their Wikipedia page. So they mentioned it on the whoever wrote the Wikipedia page for the Mighty Echoes.
I would love, God, I hope, I wish for you that someday you're walking through some town and you see a
flyer
poster for this band, and then it says as seen.
And I storm the backstage as if they're the Beatles, and I'm so excited.
You're like, dude, I don't want to set the world on fire. I don't. They're like, oh, it's another Wilder Napalm fan.
Another one? You mean the only one? What was with the early 90s obsession with a cappella bands? Why was that a thing? Because there was also rockapella on Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. That was such a weird thing that, like, we love these groups of men with no instruments singing songs. That was a little thing that happened.
It's the ultimate 90s. Unplugged.
I guess, yeah. I want to see they should do a plugged for these groups. You should have like the Mighty Echoes. You have to have instruments. That should be the new show, Plugged. But dear MTV, here's an idea for you.
So one other thing, did you notice like this film is heavy on the references? So like there's the John Wayne, and I mean, Dennis Quaid does John Wayne, Debra Winger does Elvis, and then Debra Winger, when Dennis Quaid is coming on to her, first she says, "Oh, who are you, Andy Hardy?" When he goes around to try and teach her how to play golf, and then she makes a Nelson Eddy reference, like within one paragraph, she's making an Andy Hardy and a Nelson Eddy reference that I don't think even in when this was supposed to come out in 89 or whenever it was supposed to come out, that there were a lot of people who would have got that reference even then.
Vince Gilligan, he's like a pre-Tarantino with this, you know, like he was ahead of the curve with the pop culture references in a movie.
That's what I'm kind of getting at. There's a way, if you look at it just right, that you can see this as being not an influence, but on leaning towards the same thing that Tarantino's going to, the code that Tarantino's going to crack.
Yeah.
There's things in this film that feel like,
yeah.
And again, especially for you, because Jim Varney is kind of your John Travolta.
Yeah. And like it has the thing where it's playing with genre convention. It's taking this idea of like Firestarter, which was only not even 10 years before this, the movie and the book.
Yeah.
That it's sort of like, and the movie references, like openly references, yeah, like Firestarter. It's not even pretending that it exists in a world that doesn't have Firestarter. It's just like these characters know what Firestarter is, and they have the same abilities as Drew Barrymore's character from Firestarter. And you're right. There's this sort of like, and then like the weird, the music, they're having this a cappella group in there. Like there's a lot of this movie that feels sort of like where the 90s went more successfully. Like the interludes of the singing remind me very much of like Something About Mary and some of the Farrelly Brothers stuff. And like when the guys sing over the end credits, that feels sort of like the end of a Farrelly Brothers movie. The way it's quirky in the trailer and the way Deborah Wingers reminds me of some of that kind of later Barry Sonnenfeld stuff, or like the TV show Pushing Daisies. Remember that show, Pushing Daisies? Like this feels like this movie's like it knows what's going to come, but it hasn't quite figured it out. Maybe, which is also why a lot of people get turned off by this movie, because it's like the Rubik's Cube is getting formed, but it's not quite all colors on every side, So now when you look at it, it just looks like a bad version of all the other things that But it was before all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and not everyone has Jim Varney to keep them
and like, yeah, you're casting Jim Varney at the time. This was before Toy Story, before like he was in more, respected things, I guess. But like this was him just doing Ernest at the time. Like this was before, I think this is pre-Beverly Hillbillies. So like this is Jim Varney, like him only as Ernest, lowbrow movies that a lot of people do not like, and you're putting him in your movie. So like clearly people are going to automatically be like, oh wait, Ernest, Jim Varney. So it's like they're trying, or like Emmett Walsh being in there, like you have all these good people kind of thrown in the mix. Yeah.
And he wants to be on Letterman.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a showbiz kind of like a very present, and the later on, I mentioned it already, but there's a point when when Dennis Quaid's sitting in the trailer and he's eating some cereal, and there's been cereal eating throughout this movie. If I watch it again, I might want to track down like, hey, what's going on with the cereal in this film, because then there's a reveal. Looks at a box and it just says Clowney's cereal on it. And so they made up a new cereal called Clowney's cereal, put it in the scene, and never mentioned it, except that he looks at it. And that's a very, whatever. Yes.
And that feels very Tarantino-y.
Yes.
Like the fake product that's like working with the thing, and it's clearly a fake product because no one remembers a cereal called Clowney's, but it's just there. The music on the soundtrack, like we'll talk about the scene later.
When they cue Foreigner, when there's only one needle drop in the whole movie, and it's great.
Yeah.
It puts you in the vibe of playing miniature golf.
Yep. And
the keyboards are eerie. Like you don't it's so great.
It's good. And then later the Tom Jones song that is used. I feel like that's also done really well. When they do She's a Lady.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that scene. But I don't know. And and then this moment that we digress from, of the guy singing I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire. Is that what the song's called? I don't know what the actual name of the song is. That part too is like a good, it's not a needle drop because it's not the original song, but just placing that guy singing that song there, it's so powerful. It's like it really works really well.
So that's okay. So that's when he gets home.
Now we get the scene. So
and now this is a question. He looks up at he goes to the same refrigerator where they had the initial love scene, and he's going to drink some orange juice. Looks like, and as he's drinking, he looks up and he sees that the roof of the trailer where Debra Winger had been asking him to go and have sex with her at the very beginning is going oomp, oomp, oomp. Like there's some humping going on. It looks like it.
Yeah.
It sure looks like there's some humping going on. And then there's this pyrotechnic effect I loved. When and everything, like all the candles in the place just start to go.
Yeah.
It communicates his emotion.
Yeah.
It's a great scene. And it's you feel terrible for the whole thing. I'm all totally triggered during this. And this is when
to me, this is when it clicked to me that this was written by Vince Gilligan, because his reaction to this and what he does feels so much like something from Breaking Bad. So like so basically he's building up, the heat's going down. Like you don't know if the candles are melting because he's getting angry or because they're having more sex, and it's like you can't tell like what exactly is causing. Like you can read it either way. And then he goes outside. He doesn't say anything. He's an introverted guy. He just knocks the ladder down, abandoning them like on the roof, goes into his riding lawnmower, starts it up, and just starts mowing in circles around the trailer, which then goes on all night long while they're stuck on the roof. And he just is like, he just can see his brain broke, and he's just like, can't believe that his brother's back, that he took his wife away from him, or took this lady back. And he just like is driving around, and his performance is great. It's like Arliss Howard really looking like a truly broken man. And it goes all into the night, into the day, and he's just still mowing the lawn, and no one's able to communicate with him. And that part feels very much like something that I can see like Bryan Cranston's character doing on Breaking Bad. Like there was that episode where he gets so mad that he throws the pizza on the roof. And that feels like something that Arliss Howard's character would have done in a fit of anger in this movie. There's something about the way people deal with their pain and frustration in the Vince Gilligan world, especially in like Breaking Bad, that this scene reminds me so much of that.
It definitely, as you say that, makes me think of stuff from Better Call Saul,
which I've never seen. So you've seen. So this is time for your confession.
Oh shit! I thought I was gonna get to avoid.
So you've never seen Breaking Bad.
I've never seen.
But
is it Breaking Bad or Breaking Bad?
It's. I think it's Breaking Bad.
Oh, I always thought it was Breaking Bad.
Breaking
Anyway,
Bad.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad. I don't know. But either way, anyway, you've seen Better Call Saul, and I've never seen Better Call Saul, but I've seen Breaking Bad.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've never seen. I watched the first couple episodes of Breaking Bad, and I didn't. It didn't grab me, and then it became this huge phenomenon, and I have friends who were in it. Like there's this whole like I don't know.
You should give it a chance sometime. It's really good.
Our brains are weird. I did the same thing with The Sopranos.
Wait, you've seen that though, right?
I did, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So I know.
You were watching Better Call Saul?
Yeah.
And
I love Bob Odenkirk.
And it's not weird not knowing what happened in Breaking Bad world, because I'm assuming that show references, because I've never seen Better Call Saul. I
have a feeling that it basically the way they're doing it, it's such a side thing from the way it's been described to me that I will probably have the same experience watching Breaking Bad as people who are watching Better Call Saul have with this, of like, oh, cool, that's in the background. Like,
I like it. But so in that show, which Vince Gilligan is also the creator and writes for, like, does it have these kind of moments?
Michael McKean and Bob Odenkirk are brothers who have a very, their dynamic is totally fucked up. So when I think of those two and Wilder and Wallace, it makes a lot of sense. Like they're they can't. It'd be funny to see Michael McKean and Bob Odenkirk just start shooting fire at each other if they could do it.
Could happen, you know.
Yeah. But the way they use they use the law, the way these guys use fire.
And so then this scene with him riding a lawnmower goes into the first time where you see the brothers really fight with each other with fire, where they're kind of building these crazy fireballs, throwing them back and forth. There's an amazing shot of Dennis Quaid getting angry and his eyes kind of go milky white, and it's kind of terrifying, very, very demonic looking. And that part's very exciting to me.
When they get mad at each other, they call each other white boy.
Who's the white boy now? That also feels very Vince Gilligan. That feels like something that you would see happen on the show. But yeah, like that's such an odd diss. If like we're gonna call each other white boy, and that is supposed to be a diss, it's great. I'm gonna start adapting that into real life. I think I'm gonna start calling people white boy to tell them that they're a fool. Yeah, why is that? Why it's so? And then Arliss Howard's so great in this part because he's really having fun, like breaking down and getting angry and really getting into it. And I feel like this movie too, like this, like you don't see a lot of Arliss Howard acting like this in other movies. Usually he's very subdued, and like he's one of those actors that I feel like is so much better than most of the things he's in, and people just don't know how to use him.
Hey, this is his second appearance.
That's right, after Birth,
and he's great in Birth. But this is exactly what you're talking about. Like the guy he plays in Birth is just this grounded. Yeah. Like you like him,
and he's good, but like seeing him really go for it in this is really fun. And being like, I bet him and Dennis Quaid both had such a good time being like, oh, we can really kind of do this sort of performance that no one lets us do, and never will let us do again. But yeah, no, that is such a great scene. Yeah. So. Basically, the movie is sort of kind of winding down at this point to the climax. The wife Vida swears that they didn't have sex, which is no way true, because like you said, it looks like there's humping going on with the way that the ceiling is bouncing.
And they're putting their clothes on, and
yeah, like maybe they didn't go all the way. Maybe it was just third base, but it seems like they went to third base. I don't know. I just but. It's
the film is not, it's confusing there. Like it's not just me. When I see that, I think,
is she lying, or are we supposed to really think they didn't do it because is that a studio note that they didn't bother to rewrite before? Like it kind of feels like in a way of like, well, we can't have them really have sex because then that's really sad and that's really mean to the Wilder characters. So how about they say they didn't, and then hopefully the audience will be like, oh, they didn't, but they clearly did. So is that like the misremembering of the flashback? Is that just a character flaw? Is it them just lying, but they're just bad liars because clearly they did? Or is this?
But then it's confusing because then when they're in prison, Dennis Quaid goes along with it, like because he's like, "Oh, we would have if you hadn't got so."
So maybe it was like clothes on, but not off yet, but kind of getting hot and heavy.
Whatever make it, it had to make humping and make enough of a hump so that the top of a trailer would go whoomp 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 whoomp. So
maybe they were just jumping up and down, so excited about how good they did at mini golf. Or I don't know. That's possible.
Maybe Dennis Quaid is a humpy maker outer.
Some people are.
Hey,
nothing wrong with that.
I'm just saying,
if everybody's okay with it, it's,
I would rather, for my sake, not believe that that Debra Winger's character is a liar. Nothing about her that says that, not even that it's like that she's a liar, but that she would lie about this just because afterwards she's so sort of clear about like, let's all talk about this. She's like, I don't know. I want to believe that she's not lying, but whatever. Yeah. Maybe I'm a sucker for.
So, is there anything else to talk about before we get to the big parking lot climax?
No. That's she's a lady.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Are we ready to talk about this part? So basically everyone goes back to their jobs. He, Debra Winger character realizes that maybe she went too far with Dennis Quaid and that she does in fact love Wilder, is willing to kind of give him another chance. And while Wilder's all set at work, he sees a note from her that she leaves with, is it with his, where is the note? I forget, like, what is the note with? It's
just like they put it through the
little sticky note.
Like little sticky notes, and it says, "I'm sorry." What is it? What are the fourth? I love you. I'm sorry. What did the fourth? There's four, and he only sees three of them.
Yeah. Is it like I burn for you or something? I don't remember it, or something like that. And,
anyway, there's the fourth one says, "Meet me, come to see me at the firehouse."
Yeah.
But in the meantime, Dennis Quaid is playing She's a Lady and making his trailer shake.
He's feeling good, and then this note kind of gives Wilder this realization of like, oh shit, like I fucked up. I need to stand up for my wife. I need to stand up for myself. I can't let my brother do this to me anymore. And he comes out
in prison. Debra Winger says to him, "If I walk out of here, if you want me back, you're going to have to fight for me."
Yeah. And this is him doing it. And it's great because they're blaring in the parking lot, Tom Jones, She's a Lady. And you get Arliss Howard coming out triumphant and tough, stepping to the Tom Jones song, which is really cool looking. And then it's cut short because it's him unplugging it because it's too loud, and it stops his cool moment. He stops his own cool moment by literally unplugging, stopping the song, which then basically kickstarts this amazing fight between Dennis Quaid and Arliss Howard in the parking lot while the Carnies are cheering on. Dennis Quaid gets on his little outfit, his little tight outfit that excited you. And this is what excited me. And they get into this, the great sort of fight.
Big pyrotechnic fight.
Very
Zemeckis. You're right.
You're right. This part feels very Zemeckis to me. Like good when Zemeckis was good. Pre-Forrest Gump Zemeckis.
Even the setting of a big parking lot. Like there's this.
Yeah.
A little bit of Back to the Future-y.
Back to the Future. The end of Back to the Future. A little bit of the end of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where they're just throwing things around in that warehouse. Like Death Becomes Her. Like there's definitely something about this movie that feels like the Zemeckis that I used to love, like back in the day. Pre-Oscar Zemeckis, let's just call him that.
And I guess this is where Ricky Jay really gets to shine.
Yeah,
with the pyro magic.
And
if you are a fan of Ricky Jay, this is a good place to, see his craft.
And it's just great. It's really fun, and it's like it's the ending that you hope this movie had, because the whole movie's building up to like, are they going to actually duke it out? Like really, like please. And if it didn't happen, it would be a total letdown. And this is when Dennis Quaid's character starts to really feel like a real villain. Like he kind of lost his mind and does not care if he kills his brother or destroys his own carnival. And it's very exciting. It's good. And of course, like all the characters come together. All the firemen show up. Like Debra Winger comes in with them. So, we haven't mentioned there's a gag of the sheriff constantly getting his nose broken.
Yeah.
Like that's so weird. And so then at the very end of the movie, all the characters together, much like the end of every Wes Anderson movie, where everybody's there in the parking lot. The movie wraps up, and then we get to hear David Letterman's voice, which I'm assuming they recorded for this movie. It's funny that they don't show him. It's not like David Letterman was like, I don't have time to be on camera, but you can hear me. Is that good enough? Because in another movie, you feel it would have like shown, or maybe Dennis Quaid couldn't be there, and they were like, oh, we'll just have David Letterman. Like, like that is weird that you don't see it, right?
That's kind of cool though.
But it is kind of cool. But I wonder if that was out of like an actual reason for it. If they was it always written that way? If like then you hear it because basically it's while Wilder and Vida are watching it. It's sort of more from their point of view of experiencing it as opposed to us audience watching it. So it is a nice way to, and I guess everybody's friends by the end of this movie. This should be the next Vince Gilligan TV show. Like, why can't this be a 4-season show about these estranged brothers? One has a carnival, like, right?
Wilder Napalm.
That's Wilder Napalm. I just describing this movie, going through, it's made me excited to watch it again. Like, I love this movie so much. I hope that someone out there listening to this watches this movie and has the same thrill that I have while watching it.
Well, you definitely. I'm glad I waited. That's what I'm saying.
To have me be the hype man behind this movie. It helps, I think. I wonder what Vince Gilligan thinks of it. I've never read anything about it. If he feels like embarrassed because it was his first script, or if they rewrote it or changed anything. Like, I really don't know. There's not much about this movie anywhere on the internet or out in the world. So that's why I want to see like a fancy Blu-ray of it. Like, why can't Shout Factory put this movie out and, you know, give it a cool, better cover with Dennis Quaid as a clown on it? And yeah, and I want to see
the original poster for it is pretty cool with the guy with his head on fire.
That is really cool. I agree.
Now, can we take a few minutes to just talk about Glenn Gordon Caron?
Yeah, I don't know much about him other than he created Moonlighting, right?
Yeah, he created Moonlighting, which launched the career of Bruce Willis and, you know, to some degree, Curtis Armstrong, and also sort of brought Sybil Shepherd back into prominence. But he wrote an episode of, his first thing was he wrote an episode of Taxi, The Great Race, in which Judd Hirsch's Alex Rieger and Danny DeVito's Louis De Palma compete in a race to who can get the most, you know, can get the most fares in a 24-hour period. And I think they're doing it like if Alex wins, if Louis wins, then Elaine Nardo who's Mary Lou Henner, has to go out with him. And I think Alex is just sort of being the good guy, like being like, and if I win, she doesn't have to go out with you. And I think, and he also directed or wrote a bunch of episodes of Breaking Away, the series, that Dennis Quaid wasn't in, but that's a Dennis Quaid connection, and an episode of Fame. Once again, that's why I brought in the cello thing, and some Remington Steele episodes, and then he also was one of the main players in Medium, the series with Patricia Arquette, and it's good. It's, as far as series go, that kind of series, it's got a very unique thing that, especially you as someone who really loves Patricia Arquette, I'd recommend it. So that's a good one. But he, as you mentioned, he also was the director of Love Affair with Warren Beatty. And it's, from reading about that and studying that, it's a film where Glenn Gordon Caron was kind of out of his league.
I think that's his first movie after Wilder Napalm, right? Like, I think he went from Wilder Napalm to Love Affair.
Right, too. So, as you said, Wilder Napalm was supposed to come out earlier. The whole time that Wilder Napalm was not coming out, he was working on Love Affair with Warren Beatty, sort of thinking like, okay, I'm going to work with Warren Beatty and this is going to be amazing. Me and Hal Ashby and Arthur Penn and Barry Levinson. But he wasn't able to withstand Beatty in the collaboration, is my understanding. And Beatty basically produced, like, as a producer and star, he didn't direct it, but he didn't let Glenn Gordon Caron be a director either. Anyway, so then after that, the only other film that Glenn Gordon Caron has directed is Picture Perfect, Jennifer Aniston picture that is from 1997. That's a nice rom-com. You know, it's good. I watched it and I can't even remember, like a week ago, and I can't even quite remember what it's about. But Jay Moore and Kevin Bacon are the two dudes in it, and That's good. Olympia Dukakis, Ileana Douglas is in it, and it's always great to see Ileana Douglas in anything. And it stars Jennifer Aniston being, in sort of peak whatever 90s Jennifer Aniston was, that it's the peak of that. And it's good. But nothing like Wilder Napalm. Nothing else in his whole catalog is like this movie.
Yeah, this movie is sort of a unique thing for a lot of these people. And it didn't ruin anyone's career, really. Like, you think a movie like this would, you think this would be sort of like a Nothing But Trouble, where it's like, we're not letting you make this movie a movie again. But like, Debra Winger did great after this. Like, right after this, she did Shadowlands, where she had an Oscar nomination. Forget Paris, which I love. Like, I love that movie. Do you like Forget Paris? That's a great movie.
I haven't seen it.
What? Oh, man. It's often considered like a When Harry Met Sally ripoff, because it's Billy Crystal. And I think it's written by Billy Crystal.
Oh, maybe I have seen. I have seen Forget Paris. Yes, I have.
And the part where Debra Winger has the bird stuck to her face, that's her doing comedy and doing very well. Like that, she's great in that movie. But I don't know if you knew this or not. In my Debra Winger research, I guess she was the voice of E.T. Did you know that? That she's E.T.?
I did not know that.
Like, she's not credited, and it credits a different name, but supposedly she is the voice of E.T. And she has a cameo in E.T. uncredited during the Halloween scene where she's in a costume. But supposedly Spielberg was like, hey, will you do this voice? And she's like, sure. Can I not get credited? And then she plays like a nurse zombie, like in the background of the scene Halloween. But supposedly, rumor has it that she is E.T.
Wow.
I hope that's true, because that's amazing. Just picturing her doing that voice. I wonder if if it's true, and I hope it is. I hope she will just like throw that out in a restaurant or something just to throw someone off. Her just being like, home, and then someone be like, wait, E.T.? Like, no. Oh, maybe it's a secret she'll take to the grave, perhaps.
Yeah. That's why I like, honestly, I hope when I talk about these, I always imagine that the person who we're talking about might listen to this. And so like, I don't mind if Aaron Sorkin hears the negative, like the negative criticisms I have of his work that come from a place of respect as an artist. And I feel like I just hope the same, like I realized that this morning, that I really just feel like there's a couple of scenes where Debra Winger was allowed, or they used the wrong take. She's too good an actress for me to think that the scenes where she's bad are because she's bad.
Yeah.
Or she chose those takes, or that's the way she would play it, that there's some thing there. But it is a hurdle. Like, if you watch it, I mean, if you're listening, watch the scene in the prison. I mean it. It's acting class bad. And I've been acting class bad in way more things, like a lot more than you ever have.
So describe to me, what does that mean? Because I'm not an actor. So what does acting class bad mean to you?
It's just sort of like you can see someone working out the beats, as opposed to you can just see someone doing the dialogue,
as opposed to living it and actually being it.
Yeah, and like it's not in there. And sometimes, like, acting class bad means like a really good actor can, like Brando, can have the thing in his ear or be reading cue cards and make it work. And because he's built to do that, like he chooses to do that. He sets himself up to do that. But like in an acting class, you just see lots of people saying, I mean, acting, watch the scene in the prison. She has a monologue walking back and forth. And it's just something that if I were her, I would be mad at the director for using that take. Because I can't, or for not telling me. And I would be mad at Arliss Howard for, he's sitting next to you. He should tell you, this is, you gotta, something, because you need to be course corrected. Because that's the thing is, what it is an actor not being told that they're just running the lines. Like, sometimes you need a director to just like say, hey, wake up. This is not like, I get it. Now you like, cool. That was a good run through. Now slow it down and live it, because we need to believe this when you walk out this door. And no one did that with her on that scene. And if I'm totally wrong, I'd love it. Write to us, contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You watch that scene and you say, I really feel that as like a real thing, as opposed to an actor saying lines. And well, I'll be the world that's wrong. Because the whole ethos of this is that if you're critical of something that someone else loves, the person who loves it is de facto right. I wish that I watched the scene and I didn't think that. But I guess sometimes it's like, this is one of the weird ways I'm built, is that when I'm really critical, I'm passionate about being critical of things that I love because I love them so much, which tells you a lot about my parenting, how I was parented. So anyway, yeah, well, that's Wilder Napalm. Do you feel like you found a friend in this film? I'm in on Wilder Napalm.
Good, and I want you to keep watching more Dennis Quaid, because I think you'll be surprised about some of his stuff.
I already like it.
I know, but keep going. Keep going.
I'm looking. You got me excited to dig into later era Dennis Quaid.
Please, yeah, and I will watch.
And you got to watch Goliath.
I know.
Yes,
I will. I'll do it.
Hi, I'm Bryan.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall,
examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
Have you ever thought about being a sex worker?
Or robbing a bank?
Or maybe you're bored and thinking of climbing Mount Everest on a whim?
If you've got a bad idea,
we've got good advice from the people who've been there. Hi, I'm Marty Caproni.
And I'm Joe Garrix. And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, Good Advice for Bad Ideas, right here on the Paper House Podcast Network. It will be interesting.
We promise.
Dear listener, if you are just discovering our podcast, you can find all of our episodes on our website at theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can also write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com or follow us on Instagram at theworldiswrongpodcast. And now, back to the show.
8 notes, scale an octave. Master the scale, and you master the score.
Well, that was a great conversation about Wilder Napalm, Bryan. I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to go back and see it for the first time several times.
And now you own the Laserdisc, and like, hey, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's in my life forever now. Now, is there anything that, now we're recording this to, just to let the listeners in, we're recording this a while past when we actually recorded that last conversation. We're giving ourselves the opportunity to come in and correct any errors or get in any information that we missed. Is there anything that you wanted to correct? Hint, hint, hint.
Oh, yeah.
Brian?
So I did more digging on this whole Debra Winger ET thing.
Oh, no.
And I was not quite right, but not quite wrong. So she was the voice of E.T. on the set when they were filming. Spielberg wanted her there so the kids had someone to interact with. So I don't know if she was just like on the ground behind a Muppet, or I don't know how they did it. But like she was the voice of E.T. when they filmed it. She was not the voice of E.T. in the finished movie. So like the voice you hear when you watch the movie is not her. So hopefully maybe someday there could be like a fan bootleg of just the cuts with hearing Debra Winger. I don't know if she does a little voice or what, but supposedly though, some of her dialogue did make it through. I can't find out which ones, but supposedly a few words or lines here and there did make it in. So I'm guessing maybe she did do this weird voice. So I just wanted to correct that is not her saying phone home. Maybe. in the movie. Which is too. I got really excited about it. You can hear in the episode, but and then my excitement waned a bit when I realized it wasn't exactly true.
Well,
oh well.
That's pretty bad, but you're forgiven. You're forgiven. I, on the other hand, have an apology to make. I don't know about you, but if not you, Bryan, but because I know you're not going to listen to this, but but for the listeners who I assume are listening to this because that's what makes them listeners, if they cringed when they heard me utter the phrase "cinematically cinematic" in this last episode, I just want to deeply apologize. It's not a line I would write, and I was almost tempted to go back and re-record that one line, but I think it would sound uncomfortable. So just understand that I know it was a major faux pas, and I apologize.
You know, out there somewhere, there is a movie podcast called The Cinematically Cinematic. You know that exists in somebody's basement, being recorded currently.
The cinematically cinematique, maybe? No. And now I also wanted to share an odd synchronicity that I thought about a lot, actually, when I was editing the episode, because there's all this clown stuff. We didn't really talk about it, and we talked about the clown stuff in the show, but during our hiatus, the summer hiatus, I put out what is the last episode of the Radio 8 Ball Show Season 3. I don't know when Season 4 is going to start. There's no plans. So it's effectively the last episode of Radio 8 Ball ... to be continued. And in it, I tell a story that relates to an odd experience I have with the use of clown as an epithet. And so listening to Arliss Howard use clown as an epithet to Dennis Quaid just stirred all this up for me. Do you want me to, can I tell you the story? My clown story?
Yeah.
So I was hosting a Radio 8 Ball show in Olympia, and I got this local comedian to open the show. And I've done this a lot. Derek Sheen has been an opener for the show. Emmett Montgomery has been an opener for the show. These are like the Seattle comedians that I know and like a lot. And I for some reason, I'm not going to say this comedian's name, but I do say it on the Radio 8 Ball podcast. I guess I just don't want to invite that energy in here, but just say there's this comedian who's opening this show, and it didn't go well for him. The audience didn't respond. It happens from time to time. He's a very funny guy, but in this case, it didn't work. But he got pretty annoyed, and afterwards, he sent me this very angry text, sort of insulting, telling me my show sucked and that it was, that I had insulted him terribly, like by inviting him to be a part of it. I didn't really understand it, and I looked down at the phone, and I sort of muttered to myself and to the crew who were around there, like, "Oh, damn, I made the clown cry." I think I made the clown sad, and then I guess one of these crew people went out and told him this, and he is a very big man. He's like, 6'8". He used to be in prison. He's a big, scary guy, a big, lovable, scary guy, but a big, scary guy. And he was not particularly lovable when he came charging in saying, "You called me a clown. What do you do, man? Why you call me a fucking clown?" I'm like, I didn't. He's like, "Just admit it. And he was very scary. And eventually, I don't know if you know, I don't know if you were in Olympia when Obsidian was there, but this was at this club called Obsidian, and I had to run out the back door and run in the front where the bar was and where there were people and stand behind the bar. And he came in and he was still really angry, and it was really scary. And at the same time, I thought kind of hilarious, because here we have this comedian who gets so angry at being referred to as a clown. It's like if someone referred to one of us as nerds. Like, we're film nerds. I mean, in certain senses it could be an insult, but in general, if someone were like, "Oh, Andras and Bryan, they're nerds," I wouldn't get angry at that. I don't think. It's a synonym kind of for what we are, and
or
and
like
then,
film geek, how people call them film geeks too.
Yeah. But since then, I have become aware that clown is a very re-stimulating epithet for some people. And in this case, in this movie that we just watched, when it got thrown around, when Arliss Howard was just peppering Dennis Quaid with these sort of like, "You're a clown." I almost had sympathy for this comedian who took this word so negatively. Now, that one little story, that spills out into this whole other crazy controversy that is discussed in full on the final episode of season 3 of Radio 8 Ball that you can find at radio8ball.com. And it also found its way into a song that I did a video for with Andy Dick, and it's called Absolutely No Sense of Humor. There's a comedian in this town who gets mad if you call him a clown, even though clown's just a synonym for his profession. So let's just call him Sam, the big comedian, with absolutely no sense of humor about the word clown. Well, he chased me down the street outside of Obsidian, shouting and threatening, man, he wasn't kidding. And if it happened to you, you believe that it was true. But since it happened to me, you probably think it didn't. Well, I did this guy the grave injustice of inviting him to do my show. It didn't go as well as he'd hoped, and he blamed me for the whole situation. In an angry after-show text that led me to mutter under my breath, "Oh, I made the clown cry." That's why he chased me down the street outside of Obsidian that night, shouting and threatening, man, he wasn't kidding. He was looking for a fight, saying, "You call me a clown, you call me a clown, admit it, you call me a clown." That's what he shouted as he ran me down. Ain't that hilarious? Come on, Sam. That's fucking hilarious, man. There's a comedian in this town who flips out if you call him a clown. He's got absolutely no sense of humor about the word clown. So if you see him clowning around, don't make the mistake of calling him a clown, even under your breath when he's not around. He might chase you down the street outside of Obsidian, that's right, shouting and threatening, man, he won't be kidding. He'll be looking for a fight, and when it happens to you, I believe that it's true, 'cause it happened to me. This is in part a plug, in part a synchronicity, and in part an opportunity for me to just tell this tragic tale one more time. So great. Thanks for letting me do that. People should know that they can find your other podcast, The Director's Wall, where you're currently discussing Francis Ford Coppola. And, of course, people can find your other podcast, The Director's Wall, where you and AJ Gonzalez are going through Francis Ford Coppola's entire filmography. I highly recommend it. It's much more in alignment with this show, so listeners of the show, I'm sure, will enjoy that. And what I also hope they're going to enjoy is next week's episode, one of our guest host episodes. We're going to be looking at the film September 30, 1955. September 30, 1955, which is the date that James Dean died. And it is a film about some young people dealing with that date. And it's a beautiful, strange, and wonderful film, and I'm going to be talking with Alex Simon about that. Get ready. Find that film, September 30th, 1955, to get ready for next week's episode. If you want to find us, you can find us at theworldiswrongpodcast.com on our website. on Instagram at The World Is Wrong Podcast. And you can now find us on Twitter. Aren't you excited, Bryan?
Sure.
No, you're not. At World Is Wrong Pod. At World Is Wrong Pod. And that Twitter account is just starting up. And so if you are listening to this, go find us, follow us. You'll see all the clips we post every day, pretty much, in promotion of these shows. So thanks again, Bryan, for bringing this fantastic film to our attention. Are there any last words you want to share with the listeners?
No, just this movie was on Amazon. It may still be there. It's not hard to track down unless you want the Laserdisc, but you can go to Andros's house and watch it with him. He'll make popcorn. And yeah, now give it a chance. Give Wilder Napalm a chance.
Cool. Okay. Well, until next time then, I just want to remind all of the listeners that, the world is wrong, and it's probably wrong about you.
I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. In my heart I have but one desire, and that one is you. No other will do. I've lost all ambition for worldly acclaim. I just want to be the one you love. The one you love. And with your admission that you feel the same, I'll have reached the goal I'm dreaming of. Believe me, I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart.
Radio 8 Ball.
Andros here. When I'm not co-hosting The World Is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8 Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8 Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store.
Who was the comedian that got mad that you called him a clown?
Sam Miller.
Who's that? I don't know.
No, he's a local comedian. He runs a lot of stuff. He's
like Olympia guy?
Yeah. Yeah, but like whenever any of my comedian friends come to town, he's like the host or open, and like he's the guy who got me. He's the guy who got the comedian to call Starburns and tell them that I was harassing her. That got Radio 8 Ball kicked off of Starburns.
That you were harassing some lady comedian?
Yeah. But I'd never, basically, I came to a show that he was hosting, and he was really weird to me. And then this woman who I had never met except the one time she was on my show, but she was friends with him, called Starburns, because she worked there as well, called the managers and told them that I was harassing her. And a friend of mine who knows them all was like, yeah, Sam probably put her up to it because he hates you.
That's so weird. That's weird that she would go along with that.
Well, if you listen to her, she's a comedian too, and that's kind of like, yeah. I mean, it is weird that she would go along with it, and at the same time, she did, so it's not, you know? It's like it's always weird when someone does something until they do it, and then you like go back and you're like, oh, I guess it makes sense that he was a bank robber. Yeah.
It's just like, it's such a serious thing to accuse people of harassment and stuff. It's just crazy to do that just because a guy bombed on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you called a comedian a clown. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, wild shit.
Okay. Well, you should listen to that Radio 8 Ball episode when you can. No rush.
What did she accuse you of?
That's what, like, she just said that he was harassing me.
Like, what kind of harassing? Just that's what she said was you were harassing her. Was it? Could just mean you were annoying.
She was on my show once. If you listen to it, I'm like effusive. And I'll tell you. So what happened? They were on my show. She has a podcast called The Mormon and the Meth Head. And she's the meth head, a former meth head. Her co-host is a former Mormon. They compare notes on lives as meth heads and Mormons. It's very funny, very moving. And they were both on Starburns, so I had them on as guests, and they asked a question, and it was a show where I was the musical artist, and I was playing covers of other artists who have been on the show.
Yeah.
And I played the Peter David Connolly song, Are We Breaking Up Tonight, as the answer to their question. Little did I know that they were a romantic couple, and they were in the middle of breaking up. So their minds were blown by that answer, but they didn't say anything about it. And then the episode came out. I didn't hear anything from them. And about 2 weeks after it came out, she sent me a Facebook message saying, hey, sorry we didn't promote it. That whole answer was really weird. Don't tell anyone, but we're going through a breakup. So it kind of just like rocked our worlds. And I went back, oh yeah, no problem. That's your business. I'm sorry. That was weird. That's just kind of the nature of the show. That was it. That's the only time we've talked. The whole time between the time she was on the show and when this happened, we were in I was in Olympia and she was in Los Angeles. There's no phone calls. We never talked on the phone. If there was even the slightest investigation, it would be clear that this is nonsense. And then if you listen to her podcast, she brags about lying about stuff in her life as a meth head. And she has a whole worldview around it of like, if I make something bad happen for another person, then that person has that as their karma. Like I'm an agent. Her thing is sort of like she's an agent of chaos, but even when she's wrong, she's still doing the Lord's work, kind of thing.
Okay.
So there is an ethos in that world in which it's like, oh, well, my friend thinks this guy's a creep. He made me uncomfortable with his weird magic.
Yeah.
And, I want to get in on something. I don't know. And then whatever, ... I'm not going to fill in the blanks. But.
Yeah. Wow. When did you put the Radio 8 Ball episode up where you talk about all this?
In August.
Oh, have you heard from any of these people? Putting it up?
No, I don't expect. I mean, nobody listens. I mean, for the most part, the only people who listen to my show are in India. So, I mean, that's the whole thing is like getting kicked off of Starburns just had like, we went from a certain number of listeners to a very, very small percentage of that. And the show has not come back from that. So, but the thing is, that's the thing I talk about on the show. She's not the first. This isn't the first time that I have been the target of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's my like.
I'm sorry you had to go through all that crap. It sounds. It's not fun.
It is terrible, and at the same time, I do believe in karma. I'm a little, so it is my lesson to learn in this world. And so anyway, it's those kind of experiences that inform the creation of the World Is Wrong podcast. So, chicken or egg? Did Did it start with Little Shop of Horrors? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's people that get all worked up about stuff. It's no fun to be around those kind of people.
Yeah. Well, especially when there's an immoral, like I think it's when people who take pleasure. I don't mind people getting worked up, but it's people who take pleasure in taking someone or something else down. You know, it just goes back to the Razzies thing. It's like what?
Yeah.
Some people think it's funny to hurt someone and watch them suffer from a distance.
Yeah, it's very weird.
I don't find that funny.
No, me neither.
I mean, I guess
agree.
you could say that 90% of cinema is hurting people and watching from a distance.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Yikes. Okay.
Okay.
Well, sorry to bring it all up. I was just curious as to what it was all about. So.